Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The fellas are starting the summer scouting, and there's no better team for us to be talking about early than the Michigan Wolverines. So what we're doing in summer scouting, we take a look at some of the games back in 2022, take a look at this depth chart, some new transfer portal additions, and then we take a look at the schedule, take a look at projecting this team into 2023. And if we do like a win total, we will let you guys know. So again, appreciate all the support you guys have shown, especially the Michigan fans. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. You know, this is not a team across the country we like talking about more than the Michigan Wolverines. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We've had a couple of you guys talking about how we think this depth chart is going to shake out. We'll include that as well. But Dill, I'm going to kick it off to you. Heading into 2023, how are we feeling about the state of the union for this Michigan football program?
So my feeling is like those last 2 years of Michigan football,
best
years of my life by far. Now it feels like you almost have those like nerves now. It's like now it's got to get done. You got to go get that national title. Because again, you look at what's coming back in Blake Corum, Zinner, Keegan, Cornelius Johnson, all these older guys who again could have gone and played in the NFL.
Those were some legit day 2 NFL draft picks who decided to give up the NFL draft for one more year and come back and win a national title. This is the natty title season for Michigan. And you take a look, what is even more exciting, I think, is when you take a look at teams across the country, some of those top premier programs who've been winning national titles, who've been playing for college football playoff spots. Georgia loses their quarterback in a lot, right? Alabama loses Bryce Young. Ohio State loses C.J. Stroud. TCU loses Max Duggan. Michigan is one of the few teams that were the premier teams in 2022 that keep their quarterback and pretty much their whole roster heading into 2023. This does seem like you gotta be competing for a natty this year. Dill, I want to start on the offensive side of the ball. We've been talking about just the lack of explosive passing game in this Michigan offense. It seemed to get better down the stretch in 2022. Let's start there. How are we feeling on that end on the offense side?
I mean, that's the jump they need to make.
Agreed.
Like last year, I mean, they ran the ball so well, obviously. They've been doing that now for 2 straight years. And that's not going anywhere, of course. You get the 2 running backs back. O-line's going to be really good again. But you got to hit a couple big explosive plays. Now, I feel like they got the players to do it. And now it really becomes, can J.J. McCarthy make that jump? And with a full spring in summer, can he, as the number 1 guy, I should add, can he make that jump to like that legit top 10 quarterback?
That's the thing that I think gets lost in this conversation with a lot of Michigan fans, including myself at times, is it seems like J.J. McCarthy's been the guy for years at Michigan, just with how mature he is, how much of a leader he is. 12 months ago, he didn't even play spring ball, nursing a shoulder elbow injury, was competing with Cade McNamara for the quarterback 1 spot in summer camp and fall camp, and then didn't even start the first game of the 2022 season. To us Michigan fans, that seems like a decade ago, but that's the fact. Less than 12 months, we didn't even know if he'd be our starting quarterback, much less getting the reps with all the ones. I mean, I think a lot of those misses you saw early on in terms of those downfield passes had a lot more to do with just the lack of chemistry and timing with some of those wide receiver ones, as opposed to J.J. McCarthy not being able to make that throw with all that arm talent that he does have.
And again, that's certainly what you kind of hope for as a Michigan.
That's what I fully on agree. I really do think that.
And that's what it's going to be. It's like now you got your guys back, especially Cornelius Johnson, Roman Wilson. And it does hurt to lose a guy like Ronnie Bell, but now it's time to see those young guys come up and play. It's like Darius Clemens, Tyler Morris, both very highly recruited. Darius Clemens obviously had a breakout spring game a year ago. He made that catch that kind of got all the Michigan fans fired up. Now it's time for those 2, I think, to produce. And again, you're getting back a lot of experience. And Cornelius Johnson's a guy who's like sneaky, made a lot of monster plays for Michigan. And when they needed plays against Ohio State this year, last year, Penn State last year, he was the guy. He made big plays. Now it's time for him again to just put a full season of that type of play together. And if they do that, I don't see how people stop this offense.
I can certainly attest to that. You won't find many bigger Cornelius Johnson fans than my brother. And this is when I'm like down on the Michigan watch. I say we don't have the guys to make it happen. Dill's like, Cornelius Johnson is that dude. He's been pounding the table for him. And I think you're right in a sense that like he is a guy that's made the plays that we've needed to win big football games. I want to throw out one more name. You mentioned Tyler Morris. You mentioned Darius Clemens. I feel good about this wide receiver room in terms of you got the veterans and Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson who've been doing it. You have some young guys that you're excited about. They haven't seen much from Tyler Morris and Darius Clemens. The one guy I'd note, outside the tight ends that we'll get to, Peyton O'Leary. And many Michigan fans who watch the spring game are familiar with Peyton O'Leary, the former preferred walk-on. He gets put on scholarship. Was listening to a podcast, kind of an interesting note. You kind of assume preferred walk-on. We're not sure if he has really that juice to be a contributor for Michigan. He's a guy, and he said this in the most humble way. I would have had 20-plus offers if I was able to play my senior season. It got canceled due to COVID, and he was a guy that was a star lacrosse player and a star basketball player in high school. So when all these offers are going out due to the summer camps and the under All-American camps, he was playing lacrosse. He was playing basketball, so he didn't really get a chance to have his name out there. The only chance he had was playing high school football in the fall, and that senior season got taken away from him. He said, I would have been a guy that had 20-plus offers. So he's a guy that, yes, on the surface, he's like maybe a preferred walk-on, maybe a contributor, but not a guy. I think he might be more of a guy than a lot of people think. Though I do want to move to the tight ends and talk a little bit about the tight ends in the sense of the red zone struggles we had.
I mean, obviously on the surface, Colson Loveland feels like he's the tight end Michigan's had probably since Jake Butt, and he might even be better than Jake Butt. I mean, you saw what he did in the Big Ten championship game, amazing, against Ohio State, really good. Just a big athletic guy, and to play that well as a freshman.
With gross body control. Like him going up addressing the football in the air is next level for a guy his size.
And that's going to be key. Like you talk about what Michigan needs. I don't get why they couldn't score touchdowns in the red zone with the tight end play they had. And I will say, Loveland didn't really emerge until the end of the season, so you didn't really get to see him, and a lot of the load was put on Schoonmaker and Bredesen. And now I think you do. Again, you have that true number one tight end who I think he might be a day one when he decides to come out as a junior. Now you bring in another guy in A.J. Barner who had a really good career at Indiana. Obviously, you don't get a ton of attention when you play at that school, especially as much as they've been down for the past couple of years. Now, can he emerge? Can he just score touchdowns red zone? Got two big body athletic tight ends.
Tight ends help. And one of the other kind of interesting storylines, and I don't know the real story, but stuff I've heard is Matt Weiss was the guy. You had the co-OCs. You weren't really sure what the play calling looked like. This is just what I've heard, and maybe this is what Michigan's putting out because the play calling was so bad in the red zone. Matt Weiss called the plays when we got inside the 20, and then between the 20s, Sherrone Moore was calling the offense, and you could tell what offense was better. Like when we were between the 20s, we were moving the football. When we got inside the 20, that's when the drive seemed to stalled out. Good thing we had a kicker like Jake Moody, but this is a team that if you want to win a national title, you got to be able to put up 7 points pretty consistently when you get inside the 20. You're looking for Michigan to do that. Now, I do want to talk about I don't want to ignore the best part about this Michigan team. That's the running backs and the offensive line. You know what you have with Blake Corum. Coming back, I'm for all my money, outside of Bijan Robinson, the best running back that we saw last year in 2022. He's going to come back. You have Donovan Edwards coming into his third year. Both guys who were banged up. We did not see much of Donovan Edwards for the most of that middle season. Was not healthy. I love that duo. Probably not much to speak about, but Dill, I want to kick it to the offensive line because this is a group that's got 10-plus guys that could be starters at a lot of other programs. How do we see that depth chart on the offensive line shaking out here?
I mean, right now you look at this interior, that might be the best interior offensive line in the country. I mean, you're returning Keegan and Zinter, both amazing players for Michigan.
Would have been day two picks.
Exactly. And you had a guy like Drake Nugent, who don't get a ton of attention at Stanford, but when he was a dominant offensive lineman. So you're replacing a really good veteran in Olu with a
big-time Olu vibes. Another grad transfer who's done it at a high level for a while. That's big-time Olu vibes.
And that's kind of, again, you got a lot of leadership at that position now. You got a lot of talent. And where I think it's honestly you might kick it up a little bit is the tackle spot. You bring in two tackles who are real top end portal guys who played really good at their previous schools and coming to Michigan now, hopefully to win a national title. I just think now you got some legit competition across the board. You got two guys returning in Barnhart and Trente Jones who played solid for Michigan. They obviously they weren't the stars of the offensive line for sure, but you got four guys who are going to compete, and I think you're going to get two tackles now who are really dependable.
Yeah, and that's something that's interesting is you see a lot of teams in the Power Five. That's what they're trying to tell. Like even Ohio State, like they needed to go to the transfer portal to feel better about that tackle position heading into 2023. Michigan had 2 returning tackles that you would feel good about in Barnhart and Trente Jones. And then they go out and land 2 guys who've done it at a high level for multiple years in Darius Henderson and Miles Hinton from the Pac-12. You got 4 really good tackles, and there's no one I trust more than a guy like Sharon Moore to coach these guys up. From what I'm hearing, what I'm thinking, Darius Henderson's that left tackle, Miles Hinton's the right tackle, and you have 2 guys at the depth positions in Carson Barnhart and Trente Jones who you feel really good about now. Before we do move over to the defensive line, I do want to shout out some of the young guys who shout out for them staying. I think a lot of other programs, if you're a guy like Giovanni Ahadi, if you're a guy like Greg Crippen, if you're a guy like Raheem Anderson, you're probably transferring out because you could go start at a lot of Power 5 teams. Staying, adding to that depth, you legitimately have 12, maybe 14 offensive linemen on this team that would be starters at other programs, but they're staying to win a national title. Now, I do want to kick it over to the defense, and this is where I think the conversation gets a little bit more fun. I want to start on the defensive line. If there was one thing that you want to see a little bit of a jump of, you want to see the pass rush. And this was something we talked about with losing Aiden Hutchinson, losing David Ojabo. I think who's going to be that guy? I think when the moment got big, I think we struggled a little bit rushing the passer. Having a guy who can go out and win and get a sack and get a quarterback hurry. If you had to tell me the one name that you're looking at, 3rd and 10, you need a guy to step up. Who we taking here?
It's Chris Jenkins. I think he's the leader of this unit now. He is a guy who, as big, I feel like just a culture guy, a guy who, I don't know, if you're a Michigan fan and you don't love Chris Jenkins, you're not a real Michigan fan. He brings a ton of energy, positive vibes, everything you kind of want. And honestly, last year you saw he made some monster plays in the pass rush, like that Ohio State. That hold he drew and that then got the personal foul, that kind of derailed the whole game for Ohio State, and he made that play. That's the type of play he needs to make more consistently. Go be a top first round draft pick. If he emerges as the guy and makes improvements as he has his whole career, where he's gotten better and better to a degree I don't think anyone else on this team really has, I will have something there.
Which was interesting because he's a guy that I heard was getting top 100 pick grades from the NFL. That's how much, and he was like kind of a contributor, not the guy last year. Probably one of the more unsung heroes of that defensive line. The NFL loved him, and he is a guy that I think can step up. The guy I'm going with is the transfer, and I think Michigan looked at this team and said, where do we need to get better? Josiah Stewart. There's not many edge rushers who've had the production that Josiah Stewart had. Made really good tackles in the spring game, look like walk-ons. He's probably the guy that I think is going to turn it up. You got a bunch of names that you feel good about. Derek Moore coming into his second year. We haven't seen many true freshmen play as much football as Derek Moore did his true freshman year. Very excited about him. Mason Graham, another second-year guy. And then Kenneth Grant, Mozzie Smith Jr. This defensive line, I didn't even name Braden McGregor, Jalen Harrell. These are so a laundry list of guys who can make plays that you feel really good about.
I mean, the interior D-line is going to be so good, I think, because you
and it's deep.
As a true freshman, incredible. Obviously, we just talked about Jenkins. Kenneth Grant was awesome in the spring game. And then you got Rayshawn Benny, a guy who, again, I don't think gets the credit he deserves. Made a lot of big plays for Michigan, made a lot of tackles, is an active guy on that D-line. I think you're rolling 4 deep, really, really good. I think we're going to be coming at teams in waves. And I'm really excited. I think, again, last year was just a really young team. You lost so much depth. Or not depth. You lost so much starting firepower from that 2021 year with Ojabo, Hutchinson, Hinton. Guys who are really good and obviously went and played pro. And now I think you gave those young guys a year. I think they're going to turn it up.
This is where I kick it off to the listeners here. I would like to hear your pick. Game on the line. Who is the guy on the defensive line that's going to bring the noise, going to bring the pressure? Because quite frankly, I wanted to say all the names. I went with Josiah Stewart, but you could have said every single name on that 2D defensive line. That's how good we are. Going to the linebackers, you won't find a much more talented young group of linebackers in my mind than a guy like Junior Colson, who I think has a chance to be a day one pick in 2024, and then Ernest Hausman coming over from Nebraska. Not many better true freshmen at that linebacker position across the country last year than Ernest Hausman coming from Nebraska.
I mean, now you got that kind of combo with those two running together. I think that's just incredible. And you've seen Colson's been doing it since he
He's
was
so good.
a freshman. Just that prototypical big, athletic, sideline to sideline guy, makes plays in the pass. There's really no holes in his game. Houseman's
I put him in my first round mock draft for 2024. I think he's that good. And there's a little Michigan bias, but not much. He's a stud.
And then honestly, Ernest Houseman's kind of got a similar went on the field, played nails as a freshman at Nebraska. Probably can add a little more weight. And when he gets that, fills out to that size you kind of looking for to play college football. Freak athlete. I'm so excited because this, honestly, you go back to that TCU game, there were too many big runs that gave up and just linebackers not quite getting over filling the holes. And I'm a huge Michael Barrett guy, obviously another guy from Michigan. You feel like he's part of the DNA of this resurgence and this culture and what he's brought. I think it has helped to add another body to that unit of the Ernest Hausman caliber.
Yeah, we talked about project. We had some listeners ask for our projections of the depth chart. I think it'll be Ernest Hausman and Junior Colson. We kind of play that nickel, so you're not taking Mikey Sandstrom at that nickel spot, so you're playing with two linebackers. If you ask me who's getting the most snaps, it's Junior Colson, Ernest Hausman, and then probably Mikey Barrett. So that third in the list, and then Jimmy Rolder. But the linebacker room, again, it's very similar to the defensive line. You're talking about four guys that you feel really good about.
What you also could do is roll different packages because Michael Barrett's a starting level player. It's not that wasn't meant. I mean, I do think Ernest Hausman offers a little more upside and that pro potential, but again, you play a 3-3 or a 4-3 if you need stop the run. Michael Barrett's a guy, a versatile player, obviously a very good athlete. I just think you can do a lot with the defensive pieces they now have with the linebacker room, adding some depth, which I do think they were lacking as you saw some true freshmen playing last year like Jimmy Rolder.
All right, moving to the secondary. And this is if you had a concern for the Michigan defense, it'd probably be at one position. And I don't even know if I'm going to say it's a concern. You have Will Johnson locking up one half of the field. Legitimately, if he could have gone to the draft this year as a true freshman. McCarty, Page, and Rod Moore, absolutely love at the safety spot. Rod Moore is one of my favorite players on this team. Mikey Sandstrom, the nickel, and I think most Michigan fans feel really comfortable about that. The one story I think of the season for the Michigan Wolverines on the defense side of the ball is Amarion Walker and what he looks like as the potential other cornerback across from Will Johnson.
And I'm not 100% sure this battle's settled. You got good players. I mean, Miles Pollard, a big athletic corner.
Jaden McBurrows I throw in there.
100%. Another guy had offers from everywhere. I think maybe he was a little not under recruited, but 24/7 might have.
Yeah, because he had offers from everywhere.
Yeah, it's if Georgia wants him, then why is 24/7 saying he's not that guy? Of course he's that guy, but that I do think I'm not 100% sure you can count out those freshmen not playing a little bit. I think they did bring in a couple now in that class. We'll see. I don't know. I think this is going to be an interesting battle. I think when you do have that one guy in Will Johnson who you can kind of
makes it a lot easier.
Not be worried about. It does help when you maybe are a little unsure about that other spot. But just based on what Michigan's been doing, I think there's enough talent. I think they'll figure it out.
I don't even think there might not be much to figure out. I think we've been making a story out of nothing because I think if Michigan really felt that about the cornerback spot, I think they would have gone out and gotten a cornerback after the spring. I mean, you saw them go after the kid from Ole Miss. You've seen them go after the kid from Louisiana and Amos. But you probably feel pretty good about where Michigan stands with Amarion Walker potentially playing that other cornerback spot. All the physical traits in the world. Jim Harbaugh's had a lot of success transitioning wide receivers to play on the defense side of the ball. Mikey Sandstrom, the most recent, you go back to his time at Stanford. Richard Sherman did the same thing as well. It worked out pretty good for him. Amarion Walker, long, quick. He's a phenomenal athlete. He has all the traits. Now he just got to learn how to do it. He's got Will Johnson. He's got Mikey Sandstrom to learn behind. I'm very excited to see how he looks. And then you talk about having the traits to guard and deal with some of those Ohio State wide receivers. I think Amarion Walker certainly has that. Dale, I want to throw us to the Michigan schedule here. And the win total is 10.5. And I wouldn't take the boys' advice here, but we're going to say the over 10.5 here. There's one game, in my opinion. I think Penn State's very good. But outside of Penn State, I don't think there's many teams in the Big Ten that are pushing us outside of Ohio State. You have Ohio State at home, East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers. On the road at Nebraska could be tricky, but I feel if Michigan's as good as we think they are, shouldn't be tricky. Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State's an absolute dumpster fire right now. Purdue, I mean, I'm looking at these last two games. You go on the road to State College, and then you have Ohio State in the Big House. Those are the two games that I really only am looking at in the sense of, do we have the juice to beat those two teams? I think,
and that's pretty much those have been the teams in the Big Ten. Penn State, Ohio State, and when Michigan's up, they're really good too. So
2-0 against both of them in the last 2 years.
I mean that's the thing. Like it's still weird to me. Like when Michigan plays Ohio State, I still get like the nerves. Like I don't know if it like after getting beat that bad for that long, you do still get that anxiousness.
100%.
I don't know.
Those nerves aren't going away. I'll be 85 years old in a wheelchair, and I will have those nerves. That's just how it is.
But that's like, again, you mentioned it. I just don't see them losing any of these. Like Penn State, again, could be tough. But
that's our next thing we're doing for summer scouting. So Penn State fans, like we're saying Michigan's going to win. I really high on this Penn State team, not only for 2024, but 2025. This Penn State team is, in my opinion, a sleeping giant. I'm going to take Michigan 12-0, winning the Big Ten, and then going to play for a national title. That's where the boys stand right now. Again, we're going to be 22 minutes in almost. We'll wrap it up here. Again, appreciate you guys for checking out the fellas. If you are a Michigan fan, lock in. We'll be doing game breakdowns when the season comes. We'll be talking about the fall camp storylines, obviously talking about the number one class in 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If you do enjoy the content, of course, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.